The Physics 1100 labs are making the switch to digital manuals. This means instead of having you buy a hard copy of the lab manual from the bookstore, we're going to give you Word documents, and you fill those in, submit them to your lab instructor electronically, and your work will be graded and returned to you electronically. So this is going to save you money. It also saves a bunch of trees. This video is going to show you how you fill in the digital manual. There's three main ways to enter data into the digital manual. The first is that there are a few of these text boxes that you click into and then fill in with whatever you want to type. The second way to enter data is just in plain text. This is how you answer most of the questions in the manual. You would simply click underneath the question and then type your answer. And the third way to insert data is when you insert an image. For example, you may need to insert a photograph of a handwritten calculation or diagram, like this. Or you might want to insert a screenshot of a computer graph that you made in a separate program, like this. Now, I'm going to discuss all of these methods of data entry in more detail next, so don't panic if you didn't catch everything. Again, with a text box, it's as simple as clicking on the item and then typing in whatever you want to have appear there. Text boxes are always used to fill in your names, the experiment title, and the date. To enter plain text, again, you simply click underneath the question you want to answer and start typing. For a table, it's the same thing. Click into it and just start typing. Now, if you want to enter a special symbol, for example, the plus-minus symbol, here's what you do. You go up to the Insert tab on the menu bar at the top of Word. This is over in the left-hand corner. So you go to the Insert tab and click on that. Then, over in the extreme right-hand corner, you'll now see an icon called Symbol. So Insert, Symbol, and it gives you a little menu. Now, if you see what you like here, go ahead and click on it, but if you don't, click on More Symbols instead, and it'll give you a larger menu that you can scroll through. So I'll go scrolling through this looking for the plus-minus symbol, which is what I want. Now watch right here. As soon as I click this Insert button, it'll appear on my document. So I click Insert, and now the plus-minus symbol has appeared in my document. And I can click Cancel to get rid of this menu box now. Then I can continue typing. Now, if you want to enter superscripts or subscripts, so for example, this number I'm typing in is supposed to be meters per second squared, I would type meters per second, and then go up to the Home tab on the menu bar of Word, click on the Home tab, and here in the font area, you'll see a button for superscripts, subscripts, bold, italics, and underlining. So to get a superscript, click on the superscript button. And whatever you type next in your document should be in a superscript. And obviously I want this to be a second squared, so I'll just put in a 2 here. So again, to type in a value, I click into the cell, I type my value, space, and then to get a plus-minus symbol, I click Insert, Symbol. If I don't see it there, I can click More Symbols, and then go looking for it through this menu. There it is. Click Insert and Close, and I should find it in my document. I continue typing the value, and then for my units, meters per second, and then I go back to the Home tab, click the superscript, type the square on seconds squared, and then unclick the superscript. And I can continue typing normally if I want to. So now we'll talk in more detail about how you insert images into your lab write-up. There's generally two situations in which you'd need to do this. One, sometimes you need to insert a photograph of a calculation you did by hand or a sketch that you made by hand. And two, sometimes you need to import a screenshot from another program into your lab write-up. So let me show you how to do both of those now. To begin with, let's talk about inserting a photograph of a calculation or diagram that you made. So say, for example, that the lab manual tells you to make a prediction for what you think a certain type of motion would look like on the graph. You would draw your prediction on a separate piece of paper, and then you would photograph it. And now you want to get that photograph into your lab write-up. So the easiest way to do that is to first move the photograph from your camera onto the computer so that you'll be able to drag and drop it into this document. So for example, I've got this file folder open and you can see I've got my photograph in it. So now I can go to my document, click where I want that image to appear, open up the folder again, and then I should be able to just drag and drop the image into my document. Now it doesn't look like anything happened here because if I scroll down, I see that that image was too large to fit on the page, so it jumped to the next page. That's okay, that does happen and you don't have to do anything to fix it. But if you would like to make this image smaller, you click on the photograph, you hover your mouse in the corner, it'll change shape, and then you should be able to click and drag to make it smaller. And oh, it looks like it disappeared, but in fact, it jumped back up to the other page because now it's small enough to fit. So the second case where you would need to insert an image into your lab write-up would be if you've got another program open and some information captured on its screen, say for example a graph that you measured, and you need to transfer a screenshot of that other program into your lab write-up. How do you do that? Well, first let me explain a little more what I'm talking about. So one of the things that we typically do in the labs is we take a sensor and we clip it to the end of a track, and then we put a cart on that track. Then we start a program running, and we study the motion of the cart with that program. So it's a little hard to see in the video, but there's now a graph of the cart's motion captured on the screen. Here's that graph. So now we want to get this image of this graph in this program inputted into our lab write-up in Word. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, leave this program maximized on your screen, and then go down and maximize your lab write-up over top of it. So here's your lab write-up maximized over top of the other program. And now we're going to use some of Microsoft Word's inbuilt functions to input that image. So what we do is we go up to the Insert tab, and here in the Illustrations area, there's a button that's called Screenshot. So if I click that, it shows me a little menu of all the different programs that are open right now with a screenshot of what they're showing at the moment. So we choose the one that shows our graph, and Microsoft just inputs it into the document for us. So again, Insert, Screenshot, and then you would click on the correct image to show your graph. Now you could just leave this as is if you like, but there's some other things you can do to make this look a little better. So we only really care about having this graph in there. We don't care about the stuff that's all around the edges of it. You are able to crop images in Word. So what you do is you right-click on the image, and you go looking for this little crop symbol right here. Click on that, and these little black bars will appear at all the corners and edges of your image. And you can click and drag those to shrink the area down to just your graph, just the thing that you're interested in. When you're happy with how it's cropped, you can click anywhere, and Word will show you just the cropped area. If you decide that's too small, you can click on that image, hover your mouse in the corner of the image, and then click and drag to enlarge it or to shrink it. That concludes how to fill in your lab write-up. The next part of the video will discuss how you submit it electronically to your lab instructor. Now, chances are good that your lab instructor is going to be giving you files via a Moodle website. So you log into Moodle, make sure that you're on your dashboard, and then you click on the course that you're interested in, so Physics 1100 in this case. That takes you into the course, and this particular course has been set up so that there is a click to open section for every experiment that you do during the semester. So let's look at a typical experiment. Now, the first thing you see in this section is a video, and not every lab instructor uses these. So either your lab instructor is going to assign a video for you to watch before the lab period starts, which shows you how to use the equipment for that week's experiment, or your lab instructor will actually show you the equipment in person at the beginning of the lab period. So you may or may not see this video. So let's scroll down to the files that you will see. The lab manual has been split up into three main files. The first is the lab manual's instructions for the experiment. So this tells you in words how you use the equipment. The second file is the pre-lab questions. So this is a set of questions that you're required to do and submit before the lab period even starts. So you do the pre-lab by yourself. And the third file, down here, is for the experiment. So this is the file that you would open up at the beginning of the lab period, and then you and your partners would complete all the questions and you would submit it at the end of the lab period. So everybody does the pre-lab alone, but you do the experiment together as a group. Now, underneath the pre-lab and the experiment, there's two other links. What are these? Well, first, let me open up the pre-lab to show you what that looks like. When it opens up, you need to enable editing. On Windows, that means you just click this button. On Macs, it looks a little different, but also you just need to click a button. As usual, there's a text box that you can click into and add your name, and then you would scroll down and answer the questions. Now, on this particular pre-lab, the first 3 questions are just reading. But when we get down to question 4, you'll see that there's 3 places where we need to add a calculation. So what you would do is you'd do this calculation by hand on paper, and then you'd photograph it and insert it into the document. So having seen this, I can now explain what one of those other links back on the Moodle website was for a little better. So going back to the Moodle website, right here, there's a file called Printouts for Pre-Lab 3. So let me open this up and show you what it is. Again, I'll enable editing. And here we see that the printout is just question 4 again, except that there's white spaces here now where you could fill in your calculation. So the idea here is that you'd print out this document, and then when you got to question 4A, you'd fill in your handwritten calculation here, photograph it, and put it into the pre-lab. So these printout documents are actually optional. You could do all your calculations on scrap paper if you wanted to, but some students find this is a good visual reminder of everything that they need to do. Now I have 2 final comments to make with respect to pre-lab specifically. The first is that you may not own a digital camera, and so photographing your calculations and sketches may be something that you can't do from home. So if that's the case, print out this printout file, do your calculations and sketches on it, and then you can hand this in as a paper copy to your lab instructor at the beginning of the lab period. We prefer it if you do get the images into your pre-lab document, but if you just can't get the technology to work for you, we will accept paper copies instead. The second comment I'll make with regard to pre-labs is that we do give you a 10-minute grace period at the beginning of the lab period to hand your pre-lab in. The reason why we give you that grace period of 10 minutes is because although all 3 members of your lab group are going to be handing in pre-labs separately, only the recorder's pre-lab gets marked, and then everybody in the group gets that grade. So we give you that 10 minutes at the beginning of the lab period to double check it as a group. So now we'll go back to the Moodle website and we'll talk about what you do when you're all finished and you need to submit your work to your lab instructor. So that's what this second link is about. Once you've opened up your pre-lab and filled it in and saved the file, then you would click this second link to submit it to your lab instructor. So let me show you how to do that now. So I click the link and it takes me to this screen here where at the bottom there's a button that says Add Submission. So I click the Add Submission button, and it takes me to another screen, and this one has a drag and drop area where you could submit files. So I can open up a file folder, and this has my work in it. And then I should be able to just drag and drop that file into the drag and drop area. So now the file's in there, but scroll down a little bit and you see a Save Changes button. So click the Save Changes button. And that brings me back to this first screen, except now I've got my file attached to the bottom of this. Now it's not officially submitted to your lab instructor at this point, however, and if you look up here at the submission status, it says draft, not submitted. Scrolling down, you see 2 buttons at the bottom. So when your pre-lab or your experiment is still in draft mode, that means you can still change the file. So for example, I could click Edit Submission here, and it takes me back to this screen where if I want to, I can click on my submission, delete it, and then re-upload a new copy of it. And save that. And again, I'm still in draft mode. I could make more changes if I wanted to. To officially submit it to your lab instructor, you have to click Submit Assignment and then go through that process. Now, if you realize after you've submitted it that you did make a mistake and you want to fix it, email your lab instructor because they can revert your submission to draft status very easily. And the other thing I want you to be aware of is that if you forget to submit your assignment officially, your lab instructor can still download your draft version of the file. So do try to remember to click this button, but don't panic if you forgot to. And before I wrap up this video, I have one final comment to make about how to protect your files. So when you're working with your group in the labs on the experiment specifically, try to save your files onto your own personal flash drive or device. Avoid saving them onto the lab computers if you can. The reason why is that we have had students plagiarize from other students who had left their files on the desktop. And the rules at KPU are such that anybody caught involved in plagiarism gets written up to the dean's office and could get a 0. So for your own protection, try to save your files only onto your own personal device, or if you do save them onto the lab computers, be careful to always delete them before you leave. That's just for your own protection. That concludes this video for how to fill in the digital lab manual and how to submit it to your lab instructor. If you've got any further questions, do get in touch with your lab instructor, and good luck on the experiments this semester.